How did that feel that you ended up in Schalke last year with how the offseason turned out?
I don't know, like, yeah, I mean, as the coach says, it wasn't really fucked up that I was in Schalke. It was more that, like, I was in a position where it's like you kind of take whatever people give you, you know? You're not in the position of, like, you can bargain anything, have offers to choose from, and anything like that. So I was just like, yeah, I have to take Schalke and try to kind of make the best I can and make, like, a good year for, like, my individual performance, so I can hopefully next year have a better off season, because it was also kind of unlucky that the way contracts were running out in EU. I was kind of like in this period between like everyone's contract still having like 1 year left and not any teams having like a slot for top laners, you know.
Yes.
And from what I feel is like EU teams don't really want to release players and kind of like have to pay the buyouts, you know, to like release players and all of this stuff. And a lot of players are kind of like either in contract jail or contract heaven because they're kind of like keeping a slot. And I think it's also kind of like a German law thingy where you cannot really fire people or like let go of people without paying them like the remaining salary and stuff like that.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, yeah, if teams want to release their players, they kind of have to pay their salary in full for the year and also sign the next guy. And also it's kind of like exploding like the budget tank, you know? So I was kind of like in the position where Schalke was kind of like the only slot open for Toplane. And also this year, yeah, I had good performance in Schalke, like decent. But also this year it was like the market was open for everyone on top. Everyone was like free agent. There's no one like in contract heaven to hold the slots, you know? So that's kind of why I had a better position this offseason as well. So yeah, it just kind of sucked that I ended up where I ended up like last year in the position where there's no slots. But I mean, at some points in your career, you kind of have to, you get dealt a shitty hand and you have to try and make it work.
Well, except that the joke is, if that had been the opening line of the same documentary, then Forgiven would have looked like an absolute moron for the whole thing, because that's exactly what he didn't do. He just expected to be handed it all. No, along those lines, though, right? So you're implying, basically, you'd have probably been like an ERL player or something, or had to retire if you didn't get the Schalke gig? Is that all you had on the table?
I mean, I didn't really explore ERLs or like coaching or anything, you know, because I was still kind of like my whole focus was like, let's see if we can, because there's like moving pieces, you know, it's mostly just like rumor based, because we have your agent talking to people and like, yeah, we might let go of this guy, maybe not, and then, you know, they just drag it on for like 2 weeks and then you're just kind of like in limbo, and then you're like kind of, we weigh your options. So I was just like, probably, I'm not sure if I was like willing to do ERL, because I mean, it's hard to say when I'm not put in the position where you're like, okay, it's either ERL or you have no job. So it's hard to say that if I had like, you know, the drive to do it, I maybe would, or if I would have wanted to go into like a coaching role, because I feel like I could do really well in that aspect. But I don't know, I think I wouldn't be ready to quit my career, because I still felt like I was like pretty good still.
Because, by the way, along those lines, like one thing people might not understand as well about Odoamne's career is part of the reason he's had all these problems is, first of all, he stayed in H2K, admittedly when H2K was one of the top teams, by the way, but they were never an org that had mega bucks to pay. People understand that. That's why they were one of the first orgs before it was fashionable to actually come out and say, like, the finances don't make any sense for you in EU LECS. We need franchising, you know, all these things that now are completely accurate, but everyone back then were idiots. Hey, you should just do what a Fnatic's doing. Listen, motherfucker, Fnatic wish they'd listened to some of that shit half a decade ago. So anyway, then he had the H2K period, but then this is the most brutal part. Because he stayed in H2K to like the February period when it got less interesting, the team wasn't as good. Every time he had a chance to potentially jump a ship, something went wrong. Like, he had the year where he ended up having to join Splice because stupidly there was that rumor that he was going to join G2. So all the other orgs, because how incompetent people are, even in fucking 2019 or whatever, they all just go, oh, well, I guess he's just signed then, so we won't even bother signing him. And just literally sign other players. And then when it comes to them, they're just basically like, oh, sorry, we've signed our player. Then he obviously last year is what I wanted to get to. I feel like also the year before Schalke, I understand why you ended up in that position, because think about what the year before was like, if people can remember. It's where the team had the nice little run at the end of the summer split. and they were looking good, but that was the team where everything was based around Upset. And whenever the team won, it was because Upset looked awesome. Well, imagine being a fucking top laner when the entire game's about the AD carry. You're not going to look good. Like, that's one of those areas where people don't know. I actually think in some ways, Odoamne, you fucked your career by trying to be a good teammate, because every time you've sacrificed, it never comes back and you never get paid from it. Like in that particular case there, the joke is everyone would go and sign Upset from Schalke and go, well, he's fucking amazing. It's like, no, ask yourself how that team even got set up. Like, what were other people doing? So in some ways, I actually feel like you've even though I wish the sport was the way you could just play the way you did and you get people sort of notice and reward you. But I don't know if they do, mate. Like, I even look at this last Miracle run and I could tell who was watching the games and who was just going on Twitter. People on Twitter were all like, God giving us his amazing, like that meme, or like, Abadagi is secretly faker because they saw Perks say it. The people who never said a single thing about Odoamne during that Miracle run, y'all are frauds. You don't even watch the game. You literally don't watch the game, or you don't understand what you're seeing, because he was literally one of the best top players in the entire league at the time. It might have gone like Wunder, and then it might have already been Odoamne. I'm not even fucking around. Like, who else was in the mix? Like, what fucking, exactly. So, like, I think, like, mate, you.
I mean, Alphari was 10 split, so it's hard.
Something about your career where it's like you always seem to go the opposite direction of people, or they don't get it somehow. What do you think?
I mean, I think last time I did like reflections with you, I touched on this a bit, where I said that like my biggest flaw as a player was the fact that I was kind of willing to be the perfect teammate with everyone and kind of just like, you know, yeah, I can take the bullet, but I always felt like I can take the bullet because I'm really good, and yet I don't lose much by fucking myself over to make others, like, you know, like the team perform better. But at the same time, I do think that I fucked my career with the fact that I didn't really like impose myself a lot more. And I feel like last year I was kind of like dealt a shitty hand, and it's kind of like, it was the time where I was like, all right, you have to fucking step up and overcome your flaws and just be more selfish and like stop playing for others and play for yourself, else your career is done. So that was kind of like a wake up call for me. And I feel like, yeah, after last year, I can it's kind of like got me here in Rogue, where I feel like I have a lot more liberty and more like creativity, like able to be creative for like the plays I want to make. But yeah, I don't know, playing in Schalke with like Upset and all of that stuff was like rough, because it was like he's really like demanding as a player, and I was still kind of like in bitch mode where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be a good teammate, and yeah, let's win, you know, all of this stuff. So it was like hard, you know, because I was like playing stupid shit like Karma, GP, all of this. Yeah, just put everything in the Upset basket, and when we lose, or like I have a bad, like sometimes I have bad performances with those champs, it looks like 10 times worse, because when I was like, oh yeah, he's playing these champions and then he sucks, so that means he can't play anything else, you know, and stuff like this. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's just like, I mean, it's just shitty circumstances, you know. But like at the same time, when you're like in environments like that, like for example, when I play with Upset, like I don't have anything against him. He's kind of like same personality as me in terms of like the level of like ego, because we're both like kind of like stubborn in a way, like me different than him, like in the way we're like stubborn. So like we would clash a lot sometimes, you know. And I felt like if he's not willing to back down with his like you know, like ego and stuff, I kind of have to back it down, you know, because it's kind of like in a sense, it's kind of like I'm the better man, so I'm just gonna let him like, you know, do his own thing, and I'm kind of like just gonna take the bullet, you know, because at the same time, if I don't back down, I can get into situations where it's like kind of like a forgiven situation, you know, where you just have two people just fighting each other to the death, and it just creates like a lot of destruction.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to ask you about that is because you were the returning member on Schalke, did you have any say in the roster that was picked up? Like, did you have a choice? Did they come to you first? Because you obviously had experience playing with Forgiven in 2016. Did you have a choice between like AD carry? Did you think that the roster on paper would work out, or was it kind of like you were one of the members that was just thrown in there? You didn't really have choice over teammates?
I mean, they were trying their best to kind of like satisfy me with the players I wanted to play with. But at the same time, they didn't really have a lot of like big names or options, you know. It's not like when G2 has an open spot that there's like people flocking to it, you know. When Schalke has an open spot, there was like a lot less candidates to say. So you kind of have to go into like really talented rookies and stuff like that. So we were kind of like watching Forgiven, because he was still kind of like playing, like his solo queue numbers were good, you know, he was still like high on the ladder and all of this stuff, and I played with him before, and I was like, yeah, between this like rookie, I forgot who even were like watching back then, and Forgiven, I think we can still kind of like go with Forgiven, you know, just because like, yeah, it was annoying to work with him in the past, but at the same time it worked, and I was like able to like tolerate it for another year to like play with him and try to make it happen. But it didn't like work, so that's kind of like why they had this escape plan with like NX, because it's like the budget wasn't really like ridiculously high for Schalke in that year. So like most of the options had to be kind of like affordable, you didn't have like big bucks to spend like like G2 or NA Thieves or Fnatic.
By the way, when you were coming into this lineup, as you say, like in the off-season, actually Forgiven was putting in loads of hours on solo queue. Admittedly, it was before fucking like they brought out those two champions that were like the new champions for the year, was sort of fucked in. Yeah, exactly. Like those weren't out, to be fair, during the off-season. I think they maybe just was starting to get released. So admittedly, it wasn't in the same version of the game. But what about this then? Going in, right, I want to know this. Obviously, people know how it ended and they know how ridiculously drastic Forgiven's statement at the end was, like where he essentially didn't take any responsibility and sort of implied it was like everyone else's fault in the most like, not even in like a way that he didn't. The worst thing about it was he didn't message it so you could almost read it any other way. Like there wasn't even like any out on it, So the reason why I ask this is the reason I wouldn't have expected that coming in is behind the scenes to me and other people, he was saying all the right things. Like he was actually telling us stuff like, don't get too hyped if you hear that we're winning scrims, or, there's a work in progress. And, I know some of these guys won't be that good in the first split, but I'm going to stick with it, and in the second split, they'll be good. Like, he was saying things that to me sounded like, wow, maybe he really did change over these years. And it's going to work, even though you don't have all the best players. But when you look in the actual game, it looks as though maybe not that translate. Like, was that the vibe you got coming in? Did it seem like it was a different Forgiven to the H2K one?
In a way, yeah. I feel like he was more. He had more patience, I guess, compared to the H2K days. Like he was more patient when it came to overcoming like hurdles and all of this stuff, but it just wasn't enough, because the way it was in Schalke, until we got like a lot better, it took like weeks or like even months of like play, So imagine someone like Forgiven chaining 2 weeks of like bad play. It's like way too much for him to handle, But compared to like H2K days, he was. He was a lot more. He was a lot better teammate, I guess, than in the H2K days. Like when he was having his like, I wouldn't say like breakdowns, but like his moments of like intense frustration or with like his teammates and stuff. He'd kind of like sometimes excuse himself from the room, just to calm down because he knew that it was gonna like end up being unproductive for everyone else.
Okay.
But I mean, he tried all of these steps, but at the same time, just this baseline of dealing with things just wasn't good enough for like the way professional teams are handled right now. Because it's like shooting someone in the head like 10 years ago, but you come and shoot him in the chest now, and you're like, yeah, it's better than before. Like he's not completely dead, But it's like at the same time, it's still something fucked up that you just there's no excuse to it, So that's kind of like how it was, There was progress, but it's just like. It was just so messed up that it's just unsavable.
Do you think that there was anything that was specific, like with you in terms of a clash with him? Because when we hear other people talk about him, for example, like Gillis was still tweeting out that they thought that he was that he thought that he was still like a good player, and that it was really just Schalke not being able to match his level. But it seemed like just from things that you said on broadcast or maybe during interviews that there was like a loss of respect between you two. Did you guys have like a certain conflict that ended in him being benched, or was it just a team-wide thing?
I mean, even in that documentary, you look like the only one who goes back at him, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I was kind of like just like along the time, I was kind of like one of his, how do I say this? Like one of the most like stalwart defenders of him,
Because I felt like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was kind of like portrayed as his ally because I'm fine with having to deal with people's bullshit and like really annoying attitudes and stuff because like it's just kind of like I'm used to it, so I can accept it. But at the same time, there is this feeling that I lost respect for him, because I was like, I gave you another chance, and then you're still kind of like doing the same thing, and then he kind of like took a bite at me or like a poke at me with like some of like my performances, or like my attitude when he was like criticizing my attitudes. Like, for example, my attitude wasn't perfect towards him, I kind of had like my moments where I was just like frustrated of the whole environment, like we suck, as a team, and then he was kind of having his attitude at top on the top of it all, and I was like, I just don't want to deal with all of this shit. Like, I just want some like peace and quiet and not have to deal with this shit so I can actually focus on my own issues or like the things I can actually fix in the team. So like there were like moments like this, where I was like, it's been 2 years. Like I've been like on your side for like so much time, and then it's like it's kind of like never enough, you know. So I was just like
Did you feel like
tired
it
of it.
was? Did you feel like it was kind of like an unfair relationship in a way? Because I remember even after he was like in the military, there was still things that he would like tweet out randomly during games where he'd be like, "Oh, like who would have thought that like Yankos and Odoamne would still be choking in 2018 or something?" Like he would tweet out these things that seem like pretty
I
passive
mean,
aggressive, where it feels
it's
like
just
maybe
it's
took
just
offense to it.
I mean, it's kind of at the same time I don't really care because like even the Gilius thing where you said that he was like defending him, it's just bullshit PR. Like, do you honestly think that Gilius is, or like people in the scene are just kind of afraid at the same time to just speak their mind? They want to have this like open door with everyone, just have positive relationship with everyone. But I was like, that's a bridge I want to burn because it's been too long for me to like I'm over this shit, you know. I'm over trying to excuse attitudes like this, especially when it's like not backed up by like actions and stuff, you know. So that's just kind of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to answer, it wasn't really me that like got forgiven like benched or anything. It was just kind of like team atmosphere wasn't working. Like I said that I got kind of like tired of like all this like drama, just like negativity. It was this like cloud in the air, that if someone fucks up, then you feel it, like you feel the pressure rising, So I was like, it was really hard when we were really bad to deal with that sort of like pressure in the room, So it was just kind of like everyone just needed like a break from everything, So that's kind of like why ENX came in, because we just needed like a more stable environment. Like ENX was like, yeah, maybe worse than Forgiven, like gameplay wise, but the environment was like stable, We would lose games and I would feel like it's quiet, We can actually work on our stuff and just like, yeah, we're shit, but we can fix stuff, We can work in peace, That's kind of like how it felt.
Yeah. Did you ever consider going to NA during like that off season when you decided to sign to Schalke? Because it seems like a player like you would definitely be getting NA offers. I mean, we see the level of imports that we get over here, and you were always somebody that was respected in Europe. It seems like there would have been multiple points in your career where NA could be an option. Is that something that you just like didn't want to do because you feel like the level of play is just higher in Europe, or do you want to stay like where you're closer to family, or was it just something that you never really considered?
I mean, when I was in that position, I considered, but the problem is that like EU and NA offseason work differently in the sense that, for example, I feel like in EU, like when does offseason start? Like 19 November or whatever, like around 20th November every year.
Yeah.
And by that time, on 20 November, when offseason opens for you, everyone's instantly racing to like sign players, because they already fixed up their coaching situation. But in NA, when you talk to NA teams, or at least it wasn't this year, but last year when it's the year in question, it was like, the off-season starts, and you talk to NA teams, and they're like, yeah, we still need like a week or like 10 days to figure out our coaching situation, and you're already like 1st of December, and that's when kind of like the off-season starts in NA, because it just takes a while to get coaching staff in. So it's like, I'm in the position where I'm like, NA teams are giving you guarantees, yeah, we will want you once we get this coach, but it's going to be another like a week and a half, and I'm like, do I take your promise that in a week and a half I will have a job, or do I have to take the safe deal in front of me that I actually have a job, So it's kind of like illogical to wait for NA to... Like, if it's not the contract in front of you that you can sign, it's bullshit, It's just like, oh yeah, we wanted you, but at the same time, Faker rerolled to Toplane, and he's a great offer for us. So sorry, we have to take him now. So it's kind of like there can be situations like that, So it's just like, for me, it was like, NA wasn't really a thing because it was just a flip, where you're like, yeah, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But this year, NA kind of like moved at like a decent time, It was like the same as EU, so it was kind of like a more...
By the way, I'm just going to say it right now. I'm really glad you didn't go to NA, mate. Because even though you might in the short term have made more salary, I just saw what happened to fucking Swaz, mate. And it would have been the same thing to you. Wouldn't matter how you would have played, especially if you'd have sacrificed, you would have just spent a year, and at the end, everyone would be like, he's absolute guy, especially people who didn't watch the game, would be like, he must be trash if that team's 9th or whatever. And so I feel like for where your career was at, it's probably better that you regained your stock in EU.
Yeah, I think so, because like at the same time, I felt like EU competition was at the same time, the top lane market in EU was kind of like bad, so it was like really easy for me, even if I'm looking like Schalke, to be top 3 or top 4 and kind of like put myself in a position where I'm shining. But at the same time, I was gonna, if I'm gonna go to an A, I'm gonna like flip it to an org that's realistically, yeah, it's not gonna be TL or the top orgs, TL, C9, blah blah blah. You're gonna go on like a middle of the pack NA team with, you have no idea how the management is, how the org is, how the players are, and yeah, you have a situation like in Immortals where you just suck for like 2 weeks and then the whole main squad gets like subbed and then kicked, and yeah, it's career over.
So you're telling me that the roster of Xmithy, Ica, and Apollo Hakuho wouldn't have been good enough for you? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that, but it's just like, it's kind of like a mix of like, thing is, I feel like in an A, I just feel like the orgs are just like, since there's like so much money flowing around in an A, it's just like a lot more dangerous to go to an org, because there's like higher risk, I feel like, just because of how volatile the market is for like, because I never dealt with like NA owners, so I don't know how they react, how tolerant they are to like, if you have like a bad performance or like you're adjusting slowly and stuff like this. It's just like a lot of like risk factors, I would say, especially if you're not like in TL or C9 or something that's like, a big championship contender that for sure that they have like good management, a lot of patience, and they have like a history of like backing up their results,
Mm-hmm. I mean, the other thing that you referenced when you were talking was about the overall level of top lane in the EU, which to me feels like one of the weakest roles. Like it really was just, obviously you have like Finn, Orome that ended up going to Worlds, but out of the people that are actually like good and competent, it seems like it was just Wunder, Bwipo, Alphari, and you, and no one else is really in the picture for being considered like good top laners. Is that like one of the reasons why you wanted to stay there, because you feel like you can just have more impact within the market? Obviously, if EU gets 4 slots at Worlds, I mean this year it's probably gonna be 3, but if they get 4 slots at Worlds, if you're a top 4 top laner, you have a good chance to actually like hit the highest level over there.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I felt like, because I felt like, the people that were like coming into the scene, because it was one of those years where like EU was just going on the rookie train, having cheap players and all of this stuff, like people like Vizicachi, for example, didn't get a job because teams didn't want to invest and they just wanted to get like a cheap rookie because they wanted to kind of like save money, because that's kind of like what franchising does as well. You're just like, you're safe forever. You don't have to, if you want to like say I'm rebuilding guys for 2 years, then yeah, that's your excuse to just not throw money and let some of the veterans just like retire because there's just like no slots for them. So yeah, I felt like there were like a lot of rookies coming in, and I was for sure, like I was really sure that I was still better than like most of the league, and like people like Bwipo, Alphari, and Wunder, yeah, they're like I would consider them as like, the good ones, like the really good ones that like every day if I'm gonna go like lane against them or like play against them with my team, it's gonna be like hard games, because it's not like a cruise, where I just feel like I can just play, it's like playing against them actually forces me to sweat, to like always try to get better or like think outside of the box, because they're trying to outplay me, and I need to like fight back, while against like some of the other players, you're just like, yeah, I will just outplay them and it's easy. Like,
so you're telling me you're not sweating when you had to play against Orome or what? Like,
I mean, bro, are you serious? Like, for sure. I mean, yeah, Mad Lions beat us and stuff, but if you look at like our games, for example, when we lost and we didn't go to Worlds, like I was really not sweating. I mean, I was sweating to go to Worlds, but not because of him.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So you have all the shit about your career, then now must be an awesome moment, because now is one of the few times I've actually seen, like, listen, in the past, maybe that Splice team you first joined could have done something, but even then a few players didn't quite make it. Obviously, the Schalke ones were never that great. It was kind of a bit of an underwhelming period. The Rogue team you're in now, like, listen, Jury's still out on Trimby, the support. Like, I don't know how good he is. Obviously, I can't make a speculation. But the pieces in this team, like, this is a team that could win LEC. You're right there with potentially the G2s of the world. And obviously everyone could say that now that you've won the first games. But like, just on paper, this is like a really exciting prospect, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, going into this offseason, I was like, because I knew that like Toplane was kind of like open for a lot of the teams except, yeah, G2. But for me, like the end goal or like the offer I would like really want to take was like Rogue, because they had like inspired Larsen and Hans. And I was like, already these 3 are like really insane players. And for me, like now that it happened, it's kind of like, I mean, it sounds really like cheesy and girly, but it's kind of like a dream come true, I kind of like get in the situation I want and like kind of like late in my career, because like people might say that like, yeah, 2016 was my prime, and that was like the roster that is like kind of made me really good, and I will never get anything like that. And for me, kind of like having this happen again now with like a roster that I feel like is comparable in like levels of talent to like 2016 is like feels really refreshing. It's like adds a lot of motivation, because I feel like I can finally maybe make a final, because I'm playing for 7 years and I didn't play a single final right now, so that kind of sucks. So it's kind of like,
do you get to be more of a leader in this team? Because it looks like there's a lot of like fairly silent or like newer players in this lab. Do you get to be more like a decision maker?
With time, I guess, because I'm a veteran, but right now I'm still kind of like assuming the role that I'm kind of like the new guy, because they have like kind of like the same coaching staff, the same core of players that they had over the years, and I'm just trying to fit in with like their system and kind of just make myself, work and kind of like get better as well at like what they want to do. Because I didn't really want to come in like, yeah, guys, I'm the veteran, let's just do this. I have a great idea, let's do this, and just kind of like overflow everyone with like information and like plans and strategies and stuff. Because I feel like it's not really my place, because it's not gonna like bring a lot of benefits, even in like the short term, So I think once like everything kind of like clicks and we hit like, for example, hardships or stuff like that, then I feel like that's kind of like my moment to, maybe take over if it's needed, But right now I'm just doing my job.
Yeah. Are you at all worried that you might get pigeonholed into that that like tank top laner, weak side top laner role that you've been in the past with this team? Because you're playing with two of the best carries in LEC right now, Hansama and Larson. And, Larson is known for being, a late game monster, somebody who wants to have a CS lead, somebody that wants to have resources put into him. And when you have like a bot lane that should theoretically be like an aggressive bot lane, Hansama is one of the best AD carries in the league right now. Do you think that you might just end up being just put on like the bitch role again, so to speak?
I don't think so, because at the same time, these guys are like really creative and flexible with how they want to play. They're like they don't really have this like, this mindset where they only see like what's in front of them, and it's either this or nothing, They're kind of like flexible. Like if I say I want to do this instead, they're like, yeah, okay, we're just going to chill on the other side or stuff like that, And I feel like the thing with like playing tank is kind of like a misconception, because I think the biggest problem Rogue had last year was the fact that top lane was just like unstable a lot.
Yeah,
there was
really
like
volatile.
It was really volatile, unstable, a lot of chaos, and it's kind of like, it wasn't really like controlled, like volatility, where it's just like, yeah, we're planning on doing this and we're gonna play to you and stuff. Like imagine everyone's just chilling and all of a sudden there's an explosion in the top lane, and then they're like, I need help, my lane is fucked, I need to fight here, we need to fight this. And it's just like, it creates like a lot of stress for everyone, when you kind of have a plan and you expect everything to be stable, and all of a sudden there's just like a spike in pressure on the top lane. So that's kind of like what tanks do to people, where yeah, even if there's like a spike in that pressure, there's just like, it's just a tank fighting another guy and he just got chunked a bit, So it's not like, it's not as demanding to fix the situations, or it's like a lot harder to create the situation with tanks, So for example, I feel like I can play even like the most aggressive carries like Camille and Irelia, and I'll just say, yeah, it's gonna be dangerous or volatile at these like say 4-minute mark, 7-minute mark, and that's the times when I need help. And that makes it a lot easier for people to just like, yeah, okay, we're just gonna help you then, and then we're gonna ignore you, and you just do your job and keep it stable. And it's kind of like a lot easier for them to play regardless of like, the stuff I play. So that's kind of like why I feel like that I'm not gonna be forced on tank duty, as long as like, I keep control of my lane, even like, in volatile matchups, because there's always like predictable, you always know ahead of time when the situation is going to be like volatile and stuff like that. So it makes it easier for them to play like that as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that Finn was actually just a volatile player, or do you think that it was something to do with stage games and stuff like that? Because from what I've heard, like behind the scenes in scrims, he performs a lot better than he does on stage, and on stage it becomes really flippy. Is there any truth to that? Do you think that he's the type of player that wasn't able to like really perform in high intensity environments, especially like in weak side, or do you think that it's actually Thorin's laughing?
No, I know that those stories exist for a lot of people. I know that it always sounds like a good excuse because when it sounds like it's right if he just gets over his issues. To me, that sounds like someone just saying, like, look, this doesn't usually happen. I'm really good at jerking off. Like, I can last a whole minute. They're like, give me, who gives a f-? I can't. To me, the L is the person who reveals that story. Like, oh, I'm really awesome, except when anyone in the world cares.
Well, I don't even think it comes from him. Like, from my perspective, it's also just
team ones, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's from his team, but then it's also just from his like solo queue ranks and stuff like that. I mean, when he joined Rogue, I think in 2019, in summer he was rank 1 or he was up there at the top of the ladder.
Okay.
When he went to Worlds and he was playing Chinese Super Server, he's someone that looks like when you look at him just optically, he looks like he would be better than somebody like Wunder. And then when it gets in the game, it's no fucking shot he's getting anywhere near that level of performance. So I was just wondering your experience of like how you actually viewed Finn, because I feel like he actually will probably be the best player on the CLG roster in NA. And I think that he's just not suited for a team where they need that level of stability in the top lane.
Yeah, I think he's like really aggressive. Like I think he's pretty talented, I guess, at the stuff he does and the way he wants to play like that. But yeah, I like it works in scrims and stuff, and he does it a lot. But maybe on stage there's like a lot more pressure on him, and he just kind of like misplays the trade and stuff like that. But at the same time, I feel like when he plays against people that have like a lot of experience, or like he doesn't get good matchups, and all of a sudden this guy is just used to playing his whole time to just trading to the death and making everything super volatile. At the same time, if someone doesn't make it volatile back, then for people it might be like really confusing, you know, because it's just kind of like you're not used to this environment to like playing like this. So I feel like, yeah, maybe on CL, like I feel like his style is really good at like punishing mistakes and forcing mistakes, but at the same time it's not really like what Rogue wanted from him. That's kind of like the problem. Like, yeah, individually he's like really talented, and if you're high on the ladder, you're probably really good at playing aggressive and punishing trades like this. But it's usually when you come to like team environments, you always need to find your windows where you can actually start playing like an animal. Pretty much, you can't really like always play like that and just expect it to work.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we were live viewing LCS, Upset said that you know, some people are more like bongo players and some people are more piano players, and you know they need somebody who's willing to play the piano in the top lane. They don't want somebody just like chimping out on the bongos. So respect to you for being able to kind of finesse the top lane a little bit better. I have one thing that stuck out. Will probably be jumping over like around the place a little bit, but Schalke obviously looks a lot different in the first week. There was some worry that without you on the team, like you were the one that was kind of bringing the stability. You're the one that was like the voice of reason and being able to like help out the team when there was points of crisis. Do you think that Schalke is actually struggling a lot because they don't have that veteran presence anymore? It feels like, you know, they don't have anyone to really control things, or do you think they'll end up being fine? Because, you know, Gillies was able to control the early game, and it seems like other players on the team had good ideas of how to individually play, but from the snippets that we got, from mic checks, from the VODs that Schalke put out, or like the you know, like the little like voice comms that they would put out every couple of weeks, it seemed like you were the one that was controlling the team. Do you think that Schalke is gonna like struggle without that veteran voice?
I feel like there's gonna be a time where it's gonna like kind of be hard for them, because even with Gilius, you know, I was kind of like balancing Gilius out with his like aggression and stuff. Like I was kind of like, he's like really bloody and he always wants to go for like plays that like might not be the best for like the state of the game, and I was able to like kind of like balance that out. But I feel like more like my role was like bigger in like reviews and stuff to kind of get everyone on the same page and stop like kind of like the end, you know, because I felt like, yeah, I was working with Dylan a lot to kind of like fix the issues we had in terms of like gameplay, and it was mostly like in the review stage, because I feel like my voice in reviews when I was like saying something, it was kind of like sticking, you know, like I was kind of getting everyone to do what I want in a way, and I feel like that's kind of like gonna be the problem, because Dylan is really good at some things, but I feel like now in reviews, there's kind of like a hole there where it's going to be hard to fill, I think, with the types of players they have right now. Like Abe has been kind of like stepping up in like the like last time I was there, or like, you know, towards the end of my Schalke days. Yeah. He was kind of like stepping up to be kind of more involved, not really like a leader, but more involved and putting his opinion out there. And he had pretty good ideas most of the time. When it came to like
he seems quiet to me. Like from any time I watch him, I just feel like he wouldn't be the type of person that would be like that comfortable stating his opinion. Like it seems like he's quiet from most interviews that we see, at least.
he's the quiet guy for sure, because for example in the first year we had with Schalke, one of the bigger issues we had was the fact that Abe wasn't really like vocal, because he's kind of like an introvert in that sense. But in his like second year he kind of like got comfortable with everyone. But I also felt like maybe I was able, like the way I talk, I'm kind of like confrontational when it comes to like people, or like in reviews when I ask them to state their opinions and stuff. So that might have like forced him to kind of like come out of his like, shell and just kind of confront me, with his what he wants or what his idea is. So I'm that's kind of like the only thing I worry about with this new Schalke roster, that there's no one there to kind of like force, because I'm kind of like the bad guy in a way, where I'm just no bullshit, be straight and direct with like your answers and stuff like this. So I kind of like take information out like that. So I feel like there might not be someone that can like take that role, because Dylan's kind of like the good guy, where he's kind of like more analytical and kind of like draws the conclusion. But I feel like there's not someone that to like get the arguments out of people there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't get the calm, assertive type of vibe from Dylan. I mean, I don't know what he actually does behind the scenes, so it's really hard to comment on a coach. But just from seeing the way he seems like a very like nervous and jumpy guy. Like he seems like a guy that gets stressed out easily, and I don't know if that's like the best role for a coach to have, or the best mentality for a coach to have. Did you ever sense anything that I'm picking up on? I mean, I'm just going off the energy that he gives off.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of like jumpy in that, and sometimes gets nervous, but it's not really like a negative thing, It's just kind of like I was balancing it out, It was like a kind of like, even though I was like a player, I felt like we were kind of like doing our job and like kind of coaching it, because we were kind of like the two biggest minds, I guess, in that roster. So yeah, I mean, he's kind of like the more jumpy guy like that. He's not really like super calm and assertive. Like for example, when me and Upset were there, we were kind of like struggling as a team with kind of because we had like clashing opinions sometimes, and we weren't really able to choose like one outcome, because he was the type of guy that wanted to like keep everyone happy, So we would kind of like, it would sometimes end up to like agree to disagree, and it would kind of like stagnate our growth as a team. And at that point I was like, we can't, that's kind of like what I was bringing up when I was there. I was like, we can't really do this where we're just not choosing anything and stuff like that. We kind of have to like face the fact that we need to like upset some other people, in the team to kind of like progress as a team, but like, yeah, that got better with time as well. So I mean, it's hard now to say how it is now with them.
Yeah. I actually think that's a massive misunderstanding a lot of people, probably even fans, have actually about what it's like to be pro in a game. Is the last thing you want is what Odoamne was describing there, where it's like, right, well, to be fair to everyone, let's just try and make everyone's idea work. You know what? Today we're going to try Odo's idea, then we're going to try. It's like, no, the question is, which one do you agree with? Which one is the right move for us to do right now? Because the rest of it's just wasting time being fair to people. Like, this is not a sport or a competition, to be fair. Same things happened in my world where I do like in CS when I'm with the talent on camera. We would have events back in the day that would be like, look, we're not going to say who's doing the final because, everyone should compete for it and it should be fair. And we should all get an equal amount of games. And I used to just tell them, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Whoever the best casters are should do the final. Whoever the second best are should probably do the semi. Like, surely it's about a quality of the product. Like, this isn't fucking play school. This isn't like you get a turn with the train and I get a turn with the train. In this scenario, we're trying to win a fucking game. So, like, I actually think coaches should have, like, a level of where they're willing to be confrontational, where they're sometimes willing to just tell people no. Just flat out, like, sorry. Like, put it this way. Do you think when an NFL team's, like, going over some shit, some random guy on the roster just goes, I don't think we should really do that way. And then the quarterback goes, well, I disagree. And they go, well, give him a go first. And then, no, you just go, shut the fuck up, random guy. Like, that is not your conversation. Or, you know what? I'll take on board what you said. And if it makes sense in the rest of it, I'll do something. But otherwise, your part in this conversation has ended. Like, you have to be unfair sometimes, in my opinion, to be a real coach. Like, well, I get a similar vibe to Dom. Like, from the things I've heard about Dylan, he sounds like he's a pretty good, like, fundamentals
I feel
coach.
like he'd be an analyst more than a coach. Like,
yeah, he sounds like he always gets his team to a certain level. It always seems like he has a good sense of the game, how the macro works and stuff. But I don't really get the sense that he's that good in terms of, like, I think a lot of being a coach's personality, It's like, how do you connect with someone? How do you keep someone, like, respecting you even if you disagree? Like, there's a lot that's, like, nothing really to do with the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, but at the same time, you kind of have this, like, imagine there's, like, I feel like esports is still kind of like in this like childish state where it's like you have, like, look at league teams. You have roster that's really good, like look at, for example, G2. Like, are you able to tell me any academy player from G2 roster? Any of you?
Hell
Yeah,
no.
exactly. That's the point. Imagine Reckless comes and starts being a drama queen, and he's taking hostage the whole team with his opinion. I'm like, yeah, do this, or I stop caring. And you're like, I'm not really in the position to put the unnamed academy AD carry that no one knows into LEC because it's gonna damage our situation, you know. So it's kind of like, I feel like there's still kind of like this situation where everyone can, if you're really a bitch, you can really take hostage everyone else. I feel like. And
Actually,
that's kind of like a big problem because, for example, if say I'm throwing a fit and I'm being a bitch to everyone, I'm like, yeah, I don't care. What are you gonna do? The problem is that there's no one that can like replace me easily and keep the level of performance high for the teams, you know. So it's kind of like that's why some coaches are not able to say no to like superstar players, you know,
Yes.
and just kind of like stop them from taking over the situation because they're at that point they're just gonna backfire and they're like,
By the way,
you guys are all my hostage.
hypothetical. Obviously, we were just joking when we said Reckless would do that.
No, yeah, I mean,
No, it's just good hypothetical. Yeah, keep going.
I mean, I said Reckless because he's like the most notorious one. I mean,
the joke's being pushed too far. Now. We get it. Keep going.
Well, I mean, I was just gonna say. So from G2's academy team, this is the one with Bwipo, Selfmade, Niski, Upset, and Hillsong, right? That was the G2 academy team, I think. They just they moved to players up.
I mean, true. I mean, I guess, yeah. How could I forget Upset now that he's like the academy player for G2? Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I should have rethought my statement a bit.
Do you have any favorite coach?
Story from I could have been in G2 to I am in Fnatic, and everyone go, oh, well, at least you got Fnatic. Oh, no one cares anymore. My bad.
Close
I thought
enough.
it was one of the good Fnatics, yeah. I thought you meant like 2018 or something. Nah, my bad. You were in 2022. No thanks, pass.
Do you have like one of like who for you was a coach that really impacted you that you felt like you got a lot of value out of because you've been in the scene forever, you've been with a lot of different coaches. I believe you had Peter Dunn as a coach at some point in 2018
Yes.
Splice. So you had Peter Dunn, you had
Prolly for a long time.
Yeah, you had Prolly in H2K, and then obviously you had Dylan Falco as well. Is there any coach that like for you embodied what you wanted and was able to like impact you the most?
It's hard to say because, for example, like I think I owe most of my like success to Prolly because I feel like he was the coach that worked the best with me. But that's also kind of because I feel like this guy as a coach was an absolutely insane coach when it came to developing talent. Because this guy, for example, it was his first year as a coach with us, and he made us so like smart about the game and make only like good plays and have really, really insane macro and stuff. This was like lane swap times where like macro was everything. And I feel like he got us all to like such a good level, and he made us all so smart. But the only problem I had with him was that when he got a roster with like 5 superstars, for example, the 2016 one with me, Jankos, Ryu, Forgiven, and Vander, when you have a roster of like 5 really insane players, I feel like we reached this like saturation point where there was like nothing left for him to teach us, you know, and that's kind of like when our relationship kind of like started dying out, you know. But up until that point in like my forming years as like a player in LEC, I feel like he was really insane at what he was doing. And outside of that, in Splice, when I worked with Duke, because Duke was like the assistant coach to like Peter Dunn, I had the best relationship with him. Like I was working with him the most out of like all the 3 coaches, or like I preferred working with him because he kind of has this no bullshit attitude, and he's always like really straight with me, you know. While when I was working with Peter, I would ask like a yes or no question, you know, because I just wanted like a fast answer. Hey, should I push this wave? Yes or no? And instead of being able to get like an answer like that, kind of like, you know, like a short answer, it would always kind of like deviate away from the question and become like...
Oh no, the thing about that is if you watch this LNG versus V5 game in game 3, like the way they set up, like, fucking hell, mate, just give me an answer, yes or no. No, but,
yeah, exactly. Like, for example, Peter's style works really well for players like, you know, Xerxes, for example. He was a rookie in the scene back then, and for like people that kind of like need to like start understanding this whole thought process, or like where it's coming from and all the situations and all this, it works, you know. It kind of like trains them, it trains like a good reflex for them to kind of like be able to start thinking about all of this. But for me, I was like, bro, I just want to know. I know all these mechanisms. I just want to know if this or that is better, you know. And that's kind of like when my relationship with Peter kind of like went bad, or not went bad, you know, but it wasn't like at the top level, for example, like it was with Duke. Because with Duke, I was like, hey, do I do this or that? And he's like, yeah, do this. And I was like, okay, thanks. now I improved. I know what to do next time, and I was like, everyone was happy, That's kind of like what was really good about the Splice coaching style, was the fact that they had 3 coaches. It was kind of like fitting in with all the personalities in the team, Because for example, for people like Peter or Mac, it was hard to work with me because I'm really like blunt with my opinions and stuff. While with Duke, I was like, yeah, we're both the same, so it was really easy to kind of like get along,
Yeah. I think it's surprising that you would put Prawley as the coach that was better at working with rookies, because I feel like that's been Peter Dunn's value in the scene. If you even look last year, I mean, he got so much respect for signing 4 rookies to this Mad Lions team, and obviously the rookies were talented, but most people consider him as the guy that is good at nurturing that talent.
Yeah, but see, it's hard for me to gauge that because I wasn't like in the position where I was like a rookie anymore, and the way he was like bringing up points was kind of like something that was like resonating with me. At that point, I was like kind of, it was easy for me to brush off everything he was saying because I already knew it, For me, like the critical coach in my career was kind of Prawley, because I was like a noob back then, and he's the one who kind of like made me good, so to say, So that's kind of like, it's kind of like my opinion of him is like magnified just because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess by that logic, do you think that Peter Dunn might not be the right coach for EG? Because when you look at EG's roster, right, it's Impact, Svenskar, and Jizuke, definitely, and you have Ignar as a support. Those are 5 veteran players. I mean, even definitely who's coming back into the lineup now, he's somebody who's been around the scene for a while. Like, do you
couple of years at least, yeah.
Do you think that this like kind of is an example of NA just misplacing the talent that we end up buying? Like, we get a coach that's really good at working with rookies, and we put him with a veteran team.
I mean, I'm not sure that, for example, my issue with Peter was the fact that I was like a veteran, and so like his things weren't really like good to me. It's kind of like, I think it was more like a personality clash between me and him, So for example, he might have 5 veterans, but if they're all just like chill, not like super straightforward guys like me, they might all just get along well with him, Like for sure Peter is a really smart guy, But it's just like the channel of communication between me and him, that was kind of like the damaged part, or like the part that wasn't working the best, It's not like he didn't know anything that he could teach me, It was just kind of like the flow of information wasn't really like great between me and him. So I think like his level of knowledge is great and he can do a lot of things. It's just mostly like his personalities, and there's like a whole different area of like issues that might arise,
Yeah, I mean, I think the funniest thing when we talk about coaches in Europe is always that idea that Thorin could have been the coach of Fnatic. Like knowing how you always talk about Fnatic, it'd be so funny to see you coach Reckless. I would pay more.
I mean, I would want to see Thorin as a coach. Like if either the team wins or it implodes and goes 0-18, it would be like a pure joy to watch.
Well, let's be real, Odo. First of all, if I ever did coach, it's actually better that I didn't coach back then, because that was back in the days when, like the production value was terrible for you. You'd want it to be in the modern day, because it'd definitely be a reality series. And we'd be going week to week TSM style. So as you say, we're going to win either way. We're either going to actually be good in the game, or I'm going to make that fucking documentary series the best shit you've ever seen in your life. Like, I'll make some epic speeches. Fucking be unreal, wouldn't it? And this is also one of the reasons I'll probably never do it as well. It's because I know if you do it, what you should actually do is be like, right, I'm starting a new career. I'm going to leave everything in my persona behind me, and I'm going to be humble and whatever. So I wouldn't, of course. I would just talk mad shit in the interviews, which, by the way, knowing players in the modern day would probably just cripple my own team's confidence. They'd probably just collapse. I'd probably be the next person to go 0-7, mate. I could do it. Me and Forgiven, I think the two of us combined, we could get it done.
Holy shit. I would just love to see Thorin's hype videos. It would be like, all right, guys, like
shit.
We're currently 0-10 in LEC, but you know what? It's not all bad. 0-10 in LEC, still better than fucking TSM. And then it would just turn into TSM, just like TSM flame for the next like 30 minutes. Like, what the fuck are we even doing with this shit? It's like, and that's why Lena is a bad president. Concluded. Boom. End of story. Just wrap it, just like send it to the fans. Holy
Savage.
Shit.
That would be great, honestly.
Yeah. Thorin, have you actually considered coaching in like the modern day?
Not really. Like I always say about that, I didn't really like think I was going to do it because like, it would be such a massive career move. It was more like it was just a fun thing to think about for 2 weeks. So like, it's like when I allowed myself to imagine I was going to do it and like, oh, would I do it? But then obviously at the end, I was just like, I'm obviously never going to do this. I've always said this. I wouldn't necessarily be against it, because I think actually with where like my career is at the moment, I could probably take a year off and come back. It's just that if you do that job, in my opinion, you should sort of want to be all in. Like, in my opinion, it's not a job you should do for a year and then go, well, I could quit after a year. It's like, if you do do it for a year, you should do it as though you're going to do it for 30 years and you're just going to invest your whole life into it. And that literally your whole goals are going to be the best in your region. Like, I don't think it's worth doing. So, like, as a cool answer, the obvious one to say would be like, I'll do it when someone pays me like $1 million. But even then, I probably wouldn't. Like, if I did it, I'd have to actually like really want to. There'd have to be a good reason. Like I've said a reason in the past, just sadly too late now. There's certain players I would have loved to have coached. Like Soaz is a great example. Odoamne would be one. People, I think, other coaches or teams never got the best out of them. Like I have to say, it's easy to say now when his team's really good and everyone now acknowledges Odoamne is really good. You can go back any of these past years. I've never ever written this guy off. It's actually an example why I think the eye test in EU is busted as fuck. Because the same people always tell me that when people like Odoamne, when Soaz now, they're like, oh, I would never want this. He's just washed. It's like, mate, you have no idea where something like that could be in a year. Like, unless I find out behind the scenes their motivation's gone and their game really has gone to shit. And like the people are way too quick to hop off the bandwagon, I think, in league. So if it was the right person, I think it'd be cool.
I feel like coaching.
A real reason to do it, and that would be a good reason if you had a player you want to coach.
I feel like being a coach is such like a horrible role to be in league. It's actually the most useless role on the team.
It's fun, I have to say. It sounds like the least fun, even though it's really fucking hard.
There's so much helplessness, right? Like if your team performs poorly and you're being a great coach behind the scenes, people will just associate the level of your team with your own results, and then that will just be like the stigma going forward. So I feel like no one actually knows what you do, but then you just like at the mercy of the community and just what random narratives are. Like if your team randomly has bad macro or people are unable to identify the things in the game, people just end up blaming the coach. They're like, oh shit, like I mean, we're seeing it right now actually with Bjergsen, where you don't know what the fuck he's doing. No one knows what the fuck he's doing. You just see some bad drafts and it's like, well shit, I mean, he's the coach, so I guess he's kind of in charge of the draft. And it's like, of course this guy knows to not pick GNAR every game into Camille when it's a bad matchup. Like, people don't understand.
It's a good matchup, by the way.
It's a good matchup. So I've heard it's like
I think so.
Really? So I've heard.
I mean, I think if you make a mistake, you die. But if you play it flawlessly, then Camille cannot breathe.
Damn.
That is a figure type answer. What the fuck? That is like, dude, that was like right into his mind there. That's what do you mean? Like, surely as a top laner, you can't just not ever make a mistake. That's not a reliable win condition, is it?
I mean,
I think it can be.
I mean, if I don't know if like knowing myself, like I would play that matchup against anyone. It's just like
you don't have to think you're better than him to do it.
Not really. I mean, it's like you play against the champion, there's always like trade pattern. Every champion has his own trade patterns, and it's like objectively good or objectively bad, And every champion has cooldowns, and you need to think like, you have like 5 or 6 seconds window where you can die, and you just need to dodge it, and it's just like, it's kind of just like, I don't know, it's just.
Do you think it's like a timing based matchup? Because I talked to Alphari about this exact matchup, and he said that like, before your first base on GNAR, you normally just have bad lanes, and then like your first and second base comes in, and then like after your first and second base, then you can actually win it. Do you think that it's just like you'd be good enough at like getting a good first base that it doesn't matter that that's like actually a weak point in the matchup, or do you think
even if it is a weak point, like for example, if I know my jungler is gonna come at 3 minutes, then I'm just gonna make my wave and use my jungler. It's kind of like not a solo thing anymore. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you need to be like. Sometimes I just tell my team that, for example, if I play Camille versus GNAR, or GNAR versus Camille, that there's a really high chance that I will die, for example, level 3 if the matchup goes like that, So it's kind of like, I always say what I need and stuff, but I don't know, it's just like, it's kind of like a confidence thing as well, because it's kind of like a feel thing as well. Because, for example, I think GNAR is maybe my most played champion all time, or like second or third most played champion all time. So it's kind of like, you play off of feel as well, And there's also like, players that are like, hyper aggressive or take like bad trades instead of like good trades, because sometimes bad trades are good trades in some certain matchups, and for example, I maybe don't want to play matchups that are volatile like that against people that play like complete animals, and I need something more stable and just wait for him to make his own mistakes and just punish like that. It's kind of like also you're playing the player sometimes, but like GNAR Camille, I would say is like it should be most of the time playable into anyone. If like you just need to know your windows where you're actually really weak and you can really die.
I think this is actually a really interesting topic. How do you think about GNAR in general? Because we see him picked a lot in Asia. Like LPL, they're willing to blind GNAR first 3 picks every game pretty much. They play into Renekton, they play into Camille, they played into Jace even. Like, they don't care. But the community perception right now is that GNAR is like a dog shit, worthless champion. So how do you view GNAR yourself? Like, do you think that this is actually a pick that's really strong after the buffs?
I mean, it's more like you need to think of like what's the role of top lane, because in every comp, top lane needs to like satisfy a certain like role or condition, And for example, if I'm playing say I'm going into a game and I look at enemy comp and they have Renekton, Nidalee, Twisted Fate, and I'm like, no matter what I pick top, the situation is fucked. So I can just go GNAR. It's like a champion that most of the time will go 50-50, won't get absolutely demolished by Renekton, TF, Nidalee, for example. And it's like, yeah, I mean, the champion is maybe not the best, but for what you need to keep the game stable, then it kind of like does its job, you know? Like the problem with GNAR is that this champ is just like jack of all trades, master of none kind of champ, where he doesn't have anything he excels at, you know? For example, you have people like LS who like say, oh yeah, for example, for support, Zyra is a really good pick, you know? But the thing is, why people most of the time don't pick Zyra or like play stuff like that is because it kind of like restricts the whole team into this style that maybe they're not like comfortable playing, you know? You're playing with a support that is only kind of like reactive, waits for like catches and stuff like that for people to walk into her range. But you want from your support something that is like the one that's creating all these zones of pressure, you know? So that's kind of like GNAR is one of those picks where it's just kind of like, he can do anything, you know, but he's not really great at something in specific, you know? It's kind of like up to the player to make it work, just because his mini GNAR is like a completely different style of play than his mega GNAR, you know? And right now he's the type of champion that got so many buffs that he's just kind of like a stats check, you know? Like if you go mega, you win. If you're mini, you most likely lose, you know? So it just got to the point where they buffed one of his forms so much that it's actually, that's what the only reason it's kind of like viable, because it got buffed for like 10 patches in a row. But I wouldn't say that this champion is good, you know? Like, for example, if you want a champion that engages a fight, yeah, you pick Camille, you don't pick a GNAR, you know? But if you want a champion that kind of keeps everything leveled and is like fine most of the time,
yeah,
then you can probably pick GNAR, you know?
You don't have the counter picks that you have into Camille, like Fiora, Jax, all that stuff that should just like dick it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the thing. And most of the time it's like you need to blind pick your top, and you don't want to like take a lot of draft resources, so you have to go with something like GNAR that even if they counter pick, the champion is still going to hold its own and it's going to be fine, you know? Obviously, it's not going to be a really good champion, and it's most of the time it's just like team difference, you know, where with champions like that, like that's why people hate champions like Renekton and GNAR, because they say they're like useless champion. I mean, I think it's really good. That the thing is, like, if you have Renekton, Nidalee, TF, enemy top laner is gonna sweat. Their whole top side of the map is gonna sweat, because you're like one mistake and you're dead, because that's just kind of how it is, you know? So it's like, yeah, the champion doesn't have the best scaling and blah blah blah, doesn't do this good and blah blah blah. But it's like,
do you actually feel like that still? Because for me, like, I think that Renekton scaling is pretty fine now that you have like Gore.
I mean, it's just I mean, that was the problem traditionally with champions like Renekton and Olaf, and right now you see Olaf is the most OP, well, not maybe most OP jungler, but like second most OP jungler after like, I don't know, Talia or like Lilia or Pantheon or stuff like that. You know, it's kind of like S tier jungler, just because you have Gordrinker and Sterak, and your scaling never stops now, you know, because before you would be like, yeah, at 15 minutes you're a bot. You took 2 dragons and now it's up for your team to carry you. So that's kind of like why these champions that are kind of like useless, like, work because of items, you know? It's kind of like the game right now, I feel like, is in the state where it's like which champion can abuse the OP items the most. That's why you see a lot of Renekton. That's why you don't see tanks. You see a lot of Gordrinker people abusers, Sterak abusers, and stuff like this from top lane, you know?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I guess I'm just biased because I'm a jungler, man. It feels so good to play with Renekton. If you're playing Nidalee with Renekton, Lilia with Renekton,
it's just
Talia,
and also,
it feels great.
Yeah, and also what people don't realize that you're also playing the players. You kind of have like this mental aspect that you're like, for example, no matter the matchup I play, if I play, maybe there's like 1 matchup, 2 matchups where I don't sweat, but like 90% of the matchups, if I play into Renekton Nidalee or Renekton TF, my whole game plan is to survive, you know? I don't have the luxury to play aggressive anymore, because I know that I don't have the tools to create things, you know, or like set up myself to like snowball, you know, just because of like the nature of the champions, you know? And just taking or like putting this pressure on your opponent and taking away these like options from them to like be on the aggressive side is also like, you know, like strong. Say for example, you make like Alphari is super hyped, you know, best top laner, all pro team, blah blah blah. You give him a matchup and like a shitty matchup, and he has to play versus Renekton Nidalee TF. Yeah, he's gonna be shut down, kind of like, just because he knows that if he fucks up once, he's gonna get snowballed on, and he doesn't have the tools to play aggressive, you know. And that's kind of like what these champs are doing. They're just like, they're not like objectively the best champions, you know, but they're just so much pressure and oppression in the game when you like have to face them.
By the way, do you actually think, was Alphari like overrated? Because obviously he was in the very bizarre scenario where it was the community consensus and experts as well that he was the best top laner, but he did finish on the team that was last place. So like, were people overhyping it? Were people doing that thing where it's like, you look good in a loss, but is that the same as a good play? Like, where do you come down on that one? Obviously you've been in the same position in the past.
I mean, that kind of works the same as it works for me in Schalke, you know, like we were shit for like 80% of the split and I was doing fine. And then it's kind of like, yeah, the team is bad, but he's so good. So that must be like an imbalance that makes him look even better, you know? I think his laning phase was really, really good. But at the same time, he was the type of player that was demanding a lot of resources. So it was really easy for him to kind of like make him look even better than he is, you know?
So yeah, I think it's criminal that people would say that Alphari is better than Wunder last split. I feel like Wunder is just the type.
I don't think so. The Wunder for me feels like the type of player that uses all his tools very well. Like when he doesn't have jungle, he sets up his wave to always be fine, and when he has his jungler, he abuses it to like he uses him as a resource, which is like how you're intended, like supposed to use your jungler. So that's why I feel like maybe Alphari is better in lane than Wunder, like more punishing and stuff. But I feel like Wunder plays the whole like game a lot better, you know.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I think Wunder is like
Alphari laning phase wise, I think he was like really, really good, you know. So he was like punishing you, every mistake you'd punish it. So he was really good. Like it's, you know, it's deserved that he was like, you know, called maybe the best, you know. But I don't feel like maybe in laning phase, he was the best. But I feel like his whole team play aspect, helping other lanes out, or like his map movement, was kind of like the thing that was kind of like dragging him down a lot, you know. But the thing is, there's also this thing, you know, like when you look at, okay, let's see who's the best top laner in the league. You take out the thing of stats and you're like, KDA, CSD, the damage per minute, at the top, you must be the best, you know. No one looks at how you enable your other lanes or like how safe you are, how many, like if you're safe from ganks, if you're creating good gank opportunities and all of this stuff, because it's really hard to like put a number on those things, you know. They just kind of look at what they're just doing the eye test, you know. Look at stats are good, you're the best.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Is there like, I mean, we're obviously talking about Wunder and Alphari. Where does Bwipo come down into this conversation? Like, what do you respect the most about Bwipo would be my question to you, because I feel like he's the one that people don't really know how to judge. Like, he plays like aggressive weak side, but then he ints a bunch of games. He's kind of good when it matters, except for against Wunder. Like, how do you value him compared to the Alpharis, the Wunders of the world?
I mean, he's laning like he's kind of like unorthodox in the sense that he's just like so inconsistent and he's like flipping a lot of times. I feel like, I don't know, like it's hard to say because, for example, when you play against Bwipo, sometimes like your whole playstyle is just wait for the end, you know, because it's gonna happen at one point. And that's kind of like a strategy that could be like detrimental, you know, because like for example, when I play against Wunder or Alphari, I cannot wait for the end because it's not gonna happen, you know, but. There's like, it's kind of like when you play the players, there's always like these strats that work against other people. You can set up ganks and stuff like this. But with Bwipo, I feel like his inconsistency is kind of like the thing that's holding him down. And the thing that I wonder is how good would Bwipo be in a team that is not Fnatic, you know? Like, for example, swap Bwipo with me last year in Schalke, and I want to see how good he would be, you know? Would he carry or would he like dig a deeper hole for that team, you know? That's kind of like the thing that is hard to... It's hard to think about because he was in Fnatic and Fnatic was always like a top 2 team and he always had like really good players around him. So it was really easy for him to play like an animal and do what he wants, you know? While, for example, other players did not have this luxury. Like, for example, I did not have this luxury.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that he could be potentially more exposed this year? Because this is like, he's still in Fnatic, but it's a Fnatic that doesn't have the... same carries that it did last split. Like, obviously, now you have Niski, now you have Upset, and I feel like the thing that most people wonder about Fnatic is there anyone that could control the int when this team starts, like, going to ham? Because you have Bwipo and Hilly, and it was always balanced by Reckless and Nemesis, especially in comms, it was really evident. Do you think that this team might just be, like, a little bit out of control without anyone that's there to kind of, like, pull back on the reins?
That's what I wonder as well, and I don't think so, because I mean Niski is kind of like a stable player, and he's really good at like enabling everyone else to kind of like do good, you know, because he's that sort of mid laner. But I just don't know if that's the problem with Fnatic, because I don't think once the int starts or like once a player gets exposed, I don't know if they can like anyone else has like the discipline to keep the game stable, you know, because there's like so many games where, for example, Bwipo Like, I remember that Cho'Gath game where they won against Misfits towards the end of the split, where he started the game like 0-4.
He ruined the fucking game with his lane. Like, he just pushed a wave he shouldn't have, and he just kept on chain dying.
Yeah, and there are situations like that with Bwipo that will just like happen sometime, and I feel like with time they should just stop happening, you know. But you could argue that this is his style of playing, but at the same time it's kind of like risk reward that is not really like worth to take. So yeah, now when you don't have like someone to just be positive KDA, always be ahead in farm, always have perfect team fight positioning, and always do a lot of damage. Now that you don't have that one, it's a bit rough. That's the thing. Like, he might be exposed, or he might, you know, kind of like grow into character, because it's kind of like what team needs of like everyone else to kind of like step up and be more consistent and less flippy. So this might actually be like a stepping stone for him to, like, you know, be better.
Yeah.
This is the year, by the way, if you're a Bwipo fan, you better hope he does really well this year. I know it might seem like that in the past years, but actually in the past years, especially some of the things I knew from behind the scenes, often he wasn't one of the problems in that team. It was other people's egos. In fact, I thought he was one of the more positive voices from things I'd heard within their team. But I tell you what, if you look this year, like you were saying there, Dom, about the people that have gone from the team, right? Look at the team they have right now. Like, when I look at this team, they've got Upset. Odo's already said it, has an enormous ego. A good player, but I actually don't think he's even done enough in his career to fully justify it. Like, potential means fuck all to me. Then you've got Selfmade, who has an enormous ego, but it's justified right now. He is fucking really amazing at the game. Even then, still inexperienced, still has some things he probably needs to learn. And then who else is the equation, right? Then you got Bwipo, who, as we've discussed here, has his own entire playing style. I've always thought his problem wasn't even what he does. Like, this is the reason why if he's on talk show, he's so interesting. He can always explain what he's trying to do. You can tell he has a plan for what he wants to do. I just don't think his teammates know what the plan is half the time. And that's half the problem. It doesn't matter if you had a great idea. So in my opinion, I look at that team and I think, like, fucking hell, like, if they aren't one of the absolute best teams, that team is going to implode so hard from ego. It's going to be unreal. Like, Yamato's going to have his fucking work cut out for him, I'm telling you, this year. This is going to be a really hard one to coach. I know everyone's going to be but Niski is a great guy. Yeah, but having Hillesang say nothing except let's go in, and then Niski just sit back while everyone else fights. Like, it's like what Odo said about removing Forgiven. It's not that Inax is better. It's that when you bring in Inax, his skills are slightly worse, but there's just no ego there. There's just a guy just playing the game. You don't have to. It's one less person to argue with, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, what I found strange, like, I'm not even sure if like his game is like his game style is like the problem. But what I found strange was, like, I think it was after Worlds or something, where he came out and said that, yeah, Selfmade needs to leave, or Nemesis
that was
needs
on our
to
show.
Leave, or like,
yep.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean, some things you need to have a filter on, and you can't say them, because right now, if I'm Selfmade, I'm like, fuck this guy. I like serious. It's like, why would I even try, you know? And then you put a personality like that with, like, you know, like a bigger ego, like Upset, you know, like ego is not a toxic thing, you know, like,
Sure.
For example, it's just the problem with me and Upset was that we both had egos, you know, and like, we didn't really like manage it well, you know, together. But when you have like someone that doesn't really want to have like a filter like that, and he's just kind of like saying, yeah, well, I spit facts and all I said is true, so why would I care, you know, and stuff like this, is kind of like, it's damaging, because it's not only like about your gameplay, you know, it's also like managing relationships with like the others in your team. Like, if you're pissing everyone off, then yeah, you're not going to have a fun time.
Yeah, I think the way that he views it is that he's okay with that level of criticism, but everyone might not be the same as him. Like, he's the type of person where he's like, yeah, I mean, if I end up sucking, if I'm running it down, just find somebody that's better than me and they can replace me. Like, if I'm inting, just get somebody that won't int, and you know, it's all good. And like, if my style doesn't go with the team, then I'm down with it. But I just feel like everyone works differently, and it's more just managing like the personalities. I know as a jungler, man, I think junglers have fragile egos just in general. Like, we get so much fucking abuse from solo queue and shit, man, that like when you put us in a team environment, if you hear that shit, like I played really well and you still might not want me, like, fuck. I wonder if they can actually overcome that. The other thing I wanted to mention that I thought of while you were talking is how you kind of referenced when you came into Rogue, how because you're the new guy, you don't feel like it's your place really to like start speaking up and taking control of the situation, because of the fact that like they're kind of an established unit. 3 of the players have been there before. They have a good core, and the team performed well around that core. And for me, I think that this could actually be the same type of issue that players like Niski and Upset feel in Fnatic, because if they're the ones that are supposed to be reeling back the team, when they're joining a team that's so storied, like at worst they've been second place for God knows how long, do they feel comfortable enough in their environment to be able to, overstep and be like, hey, like, no, we shouldn't do this, we should play for this? Like, do they feel like they have enough of a voice in the team, or are they going to be willing to, assume that role and really direct the team into a more like passive way if they feel that's possible? Like, I'm just not sure if they feel comfortable enough with that. So here we are approaching the end of the episode. Odoamne obviously has to go. Upset is more int than Hilly. I just read that and almost called you the wrong name. But we're about to wrap it up. And normally at the end we like to extend it to our guest to just see if there was anything that we missed on the show, anything that you wanted to talk about as like a final topic that we didn't. If not, we'll just wrap it up here. I think it was a really good episode. So yeah, is there anything that you came on the show you wanted to discuss and we didn't hit? If not,
I think Torrid said one time about something about H2K, that it wasn't really like the most storied org and stuff, but I do think that like when H2K was in its prime, I think it was, with the 5.5 memes and all of that stuff.
5.5K.
I think H2K back then, before I left, or like up until the point I left, was the org that I had had the biggest like financial resources in EU. I feel like maybe the brand wasn't the best, but I think people memed it a lot, but I think it was one of the best places to work at, because like you were rewarded financially. Like for example, for H2K back in the day, even when G2 was like winning splits, H2K was paying more than G2 and all of this stuff, and most people might know that, and it kind of all went downhill after I left. That's kind of when they went into their like whole safe budget mode.
Yeah,
you need
of
to
course.
keep it like on a positive cash flow and all of this stuff. It's just kind of like the thing I didn't get to respond to from the episode.
Yeah, sure. I guess the question I would have would be like, why do you think that the H2K lineup? Because I mean, you obviously had a lot of superstars, as you said, in that lineup. Why do you think that H2K lineup was never able to actually like make it to the final when you were on the team?
I don't know. It's also kind of like the thing I said with like I feel like we got to the point where Proli wasn't really able to like manage 5 big, like I wouldn't say egos, but like 5 big personalities like that. And I don't know, just kind of like the whole team dynamic started kind of like dying, And I think with the semifinal, or I think it was semifinal against Splice that we choked, or like we just had like bad performances where we lost 3-2. Because I feel like that was kind of like our year to win the whole LEC, and we just kind of fell short to Splice, and that's kind of like what no one really remembers that anymore. It's kind of like, yeah, we just lost, but we were kind of like really hyped, or like not even overhyped, because I think on paper we were like rank 1 team in EU going into that playoffs, and we were supposed to win against Splice, but we just messed up so many times. People are always saying like, yeah, GNAR into GP 5 times and all of this stuff, But the issues were deeper than that, and that's kind of like why we didn't make finals then.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it was a good episode. Enjoy your. I think you said you had like an exercise, like team exercises to do.
Yeah, we have team fitness, so that's gonna be great.
All right, team fitness, man. So hopefully you enjoyed it. It was nice to finally have you on the show. One of the members of the honorary tribe of LCS live viewing. So thank you for being here, man. It was a good time. I think we talked about a lot of interesting things. And we'll be on next week at the same time, 10 PST, 7 Central European time. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was really fun to hang out and chat about all the spicy subjects.
Yeah, we'll definitely get you on another time. Thanks, man.